During round 3 of Heroic's game against Complexity on Mirage, Heroic went in with a very aggressive double boost up B to get B balance control. So they get 1 kill as well as getting priceless map control with this aggressive play, and ultimately, as we saw during the game, it allowed them to actually delay Complexity into the late round where Heroic would ultimately win the round. This is a really good CT strategy because 1, you do it in a pair, which means that you can either trade for each other or at least then double down on the single player that's there, meaning you should get a kill potentially for nothing, right? And even barring any crazy situations, you should at least get a 1-for-1 at the minimum. The other second actual positive is the map control as well as pressure that you actually put on the map. So BAPS control is actually a really difficult one to get normally, and doing it this early really throws a spanner in the works when it comes to the T side, because it really throws their default off, or the core they're going off, which we saw from this actual round here. So we've seen the T side player clear out the B apartments very slowly, didn't waste any utility, but took an awful lot of time, and it really forced them to play a card which they probably didn't want to do at the start of the round. In this clip here, we actually see later on in the round where the Heroic players didn't use up all their utility, and instead of actually using all their utility, they were able to use it when the actual B attack came in late. So here's Rush's POV. You can see he's rather timid in actually getting towards the kitchen area, and that actually is his fault here, as they'd already pushed forward. stavn is the player that actually gets the kill during this push, as well as that he's the first player boosted. He jumps from the site where the actual marble flooring starts, which is where it's slightly elevated compared to the rest of the site. He is not the player that actually smokes it in this instance, but he was ready to do so. The next player shown is refrezh. He is the second player that actually does the boost, and it's one thing to note here where when you're jumping on top of the player who is boosting, you need to wait like half a second so your jump can actually reset, because it's actually a slightly higher jump than normal. One key thing as well is that refrezh takes about 90 damage. So when you consider you're a player on 10 HP with a rifle, and this is technically a bonus round for a lot of the CTs, there probably is a player with an MP9. refrezh seeks that player out, which is TeSeS, and he actually swaps the rifle with him. Wouldn't be fair if I didn't show the player actually doing the boost. Of course, sjuush is the man underneath to actually send his players over into the BAPS, and you line up with the shadow on the floor. So, when I mentioned the actual gun being dropped to TeSeS, it was more of a this is a really smart play, but the fact that it actually did have impact in the round itself goes way further than you'd expect normally. Because a lot of the time it's just a case of, you might be more useful with this, here it is. And in this instance, TeSeS gets a kill as well as damage, and refrezh also gets a kill with MP9. It's a win-win for both parties. So coincidentally today we actually saw NIP run the exact same aggressive play to a, let's say, a much worse standard. They ran straight into the G2 onslaught, that is Amanek, as well as Nexa, and basically the entire gang, and the B site actually was lost pretty much immediately. You could argue that this is a case where sometimes a good setup or a good play is not the right time to call that play. And in this instance, I'll be honest, it's just a bit unfortunate.